Wes Anderson.
Hi, thank you, thank you. Thanks. Thank you, thanks for coming. Thank you.
Wes, I'm going to start with a couple of questions myself, and then
Okay.
open it to the public.
Great.
Not too long ago, I had the honor to be with Bob Balaban, who helped me introduce your last film. And during this introduction, he said, "Well, each one of Wes's film is a world, and they're all very different from each other. And I'm privileged to be invited to be in some of them. And how and where does one of those worlds starts?"
Well, I feel, the thing I think that I sort of observed over the years is usually we start with at least two things that might not go together. And they get the movie is the result of some mixture. An example would be like Darjeeling Limited. I was thinking I would like to do a movie on a train, and Roman Coppola, Jason Schwartzman, we were talking about doing a movie about three brothers, and we just put and then I had another idea, which was I'd seen The River, the genre noir movie, The River, and I'd sort of think I want to do a movie in India, and so the movie is the result of mixing these ideas together. Really, they're not even quite ideas; they're just starting points, and improvising from there. And I kind of feel almost every movie that I've done begins something like that.
And is that, you often work with a co-writer, is that part of sort of a free association and a brainstorming process of generating the basis of the film?
Yes, well, it's interesting, that's a pretty accurate description. Roman here, this is Roman Coppola here, he, Roman did not work with me on the script of the Henry Sugar. I make that point because he's on strike, and so couldn't be here in that case. But so he's here as a friend. Roman always described it. He feels like we're writing a movie. Like writing a movie is like we're in a forest that we've been in before but forgotten, and we're kind of trying to recover. Was that in the forest? Was that in the forest? Slowly, the movie kind of reveals itself like a thing that already exists, but you just have to kind of dig it up. And I think that's a metaphor, really. I think it doesn't exist. But the experience of trying to concoct a story for us has that sort of feeling.
I was very fascinated yesterday. Alexander Desplat, which is another one of your longtime collaborators, and he does your music in a lot of your film. I was very moved, and when he was talking about the way you two works, he did the laudatio for the award that Wes received yesterday, and he was talking about how you meet and you try things, and then you go home and he plays with it. And can you talk a little bit about your work, the way you work with these people that you've collaborated so often, and I'm thinking about Alexander, but also your director of photography, your Robert Yeoman, your production designer.
Yes. Well, each of these collaborations is so different, one from the next. With Bob Yeoman, it's usually quite simple, the preparation. We used to watch a lot of movies together before each movie, but now we've communicated about all these things so much. We have this kind of well of shared references. We built up the references we share over the years, and so now we kind of know, he knows sort of where I'm going. And whereas Adam Stockhausen, my production designer, we work mostly by email. We go scouting, and then designs and things happen by email. And I would say all the processes tend to be not very preconceived. Mm-hmm. They tend to be discovery processes, and always research.
This brings me to the fact, and we talked a little bit about it this the other day. A lot of your work seems to be a tension between the hyper control and the complete, and freedom. And can you talk a little bit about those double forces?
Yes. Well, I think when you make a movie, you're saying, I'm gonna lead you through this story. You're going to take control of it and try to shape the experience. But it's also, when you make a movie, you're saying, I'm going to invite chaos into my life. It's in a way the least controllable kind of endeavor you can undertake. I always have this thought when we made the Darjeeling Limited in India. We had this kind of, we'd spent a bit of time together in India, our little group, and we had this plan that was, we're going to prepare everything very, very carefully, and we're going to be very strict about the instructions we give and expressing our wishes, but then whatever happens, that's going to be the movie. And sometimes what happened was just absolutely nothing like what we had envisioned. And we always say, okay, let's use that. We've done our advanced work, and now let's live with what the world is bringing us in the context of this movie. Sometimes it took us in strange places. I mean, in particular, we were visiting this little village, and we kind of had this, well, if we could do this shot like this, if they built us a hut over here. And the guys who were the elders of the village said, we can build you that hut. And so we came back 2 weeks later, and they built the hut, and it was perfect. And we said, thank you very much, and we'll see you on Tuesday. And when we came back on the Tuesday, the hut had been decorated with all these flowers and swirls, and they painted it, and it was pink and blue, and it was brightly colorful. And the scene was a funeral. And it was like, wow, whoa. And he said, no, that's just going to be that kind of funeral. And that's how we shot it. Yeah.
There is so much, in your films, there is so much detail, and there is a genuine, seems to me at least, passion for the craft of it, and is that part of what you enjoy about the process? Yes,
I think so. Yeah, I love the experience of making things for a movie. That's all, there's a sort of luxury to be able to do that, but it introduces lots of opportunities to make it a bigger experience.
And I lost my train of thought. I was thinking about, your films have an incredible following, and especially among young people, and this is a testament, and this is some crowd that the rest is outside because they couldn't make it in. So, and I always wonder when a filmmaker has such an instinctual response from a large audience, and it seems to me that your films, the emotional truth of your film, your films are very much about artifice, but there is an emotional truth that comes across that completely connects with the audience. Is that true?
Well, I think, you, in a way that for me, the artifice of the movie is, well, every movie is artifice. It's which kind of artifice a movie is trying to create the illusion of something happening. Even any movie is doing that. I think if it has editing. The most documentary style movie, there's still very likely a light over here, and there's almost definitely a microphone over there, and so it's the experience of it is fake. You're creating something, but I often like to use the artificial things, use the sort of theatrical things. In a way, to me, it can make it a bit more authentic if you show this is really happening in front of the camera this way, and here's how we're creating our illusion. And in my case, it doesn't take me out of the movie when I have that experience watching a film. I like it, but I don't think that's the case with everybody. And some people, I think they find that that pulls them away from the story. And people tell me they think, well, you do distancing things in your movie, but that's actually not my intention. I don't mean to distance audiences for me, the movie is the emotions of it, and the emotions come from, with movies, emotion can come in the strangest ways. It's, you know, some moment you remember from a movie that had to do with some tiny thing an actor did one time in his or her life, and a bit of music that almost by chance ended up in that moment, and some combination of the light and the people happens, and you capture it, you know.
Do you think that there is an Andersonian hero? I mean, some of your characters have recurring traits. They are incredibly creative, incredibly bright, a little bit bigger than their box where, you know, where they find themselves. And they can be a little nasty, but ultimately they're not. Ultimately, they're not. I mean, do you see this recurrence in a lot of the main characters?
I do say, well, you know, I think, you know, ultimately, anytime you say, well, why do you do this, why do you do that, the answer is kind of always the same, because I wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, it's really, it's instinctive, and often I find you know, we're writing something and we say, well, now we're reaching a point where we can go this way or this way, and we could go this way. This other way does connect to things we've done before. The more for us, the completely different way would be to go the other, but I don't want to. I want to go this way. I feel the story is taking me this way. So it's often, you know, the links between, for me, the links between my movies are kind of, I sort of could compare it to handwriting. It's, you know, it's there and you don't really control it. It's certainly not deliberate. It's personal.
Yeah, but so because it feels to me that there is a kind of almost like an ethical identification on.
It becomes like that.
It becomes
I think so.
On those characters.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Do you want to raise your hand and we open? Yes, there.
Hi, I'm Beatrice from Bocconi TV. First of all, thank you for your time today. So with the wonderful story of Henry Sugar, you started to dive into the world of short stories adaptations. Do you think you may go down this route even for future projects?
Well, we did make some other short stories. So Henry Sugar is the first short story. It's its own independent story, but we've made 3 more Roald Dahl stories that will eventually will also be shown. There's one called Poison, and one called The Ratcatcher, one called The Swan. I like short films. I've made a few short films in the past, and I have real favorite short films, you know, that I've watched over and over again over the years. But I don't know. The next movie, I have a script that we wrote right before the strike, that we finished right before the Writers Guild strike began, and that one is, you know, it's actually quite simple. 3 characters, totally linear, and you know, it's kind of, I wouldn't say traditional because it's very weird. But it is quite straightforward sort of storytelling, and it's a normal feature-length thing.
I want to follow up on her question, because with the notion of talking about literature, you know, the other day I made a mistake because I said you're adapting a lot of books. No, you're not. But literature is a very important role in your films.
Yes, yeah. Well, I always, you know, the person I think of is Truffaut, because not only did Truffaut adapt book after book after book, but his movies are filled with books. I mean, there's few movies where you see someone in Day for Night. There's a scene where he's just gone to buy books, and he just puts out the books. They're all movie books. They're all books about movies that he's bought, and essentially he's just saying, "Here's what I bought today." That's a moment in the movie. That's an odd, interesting thing, and it's an expression of part of his way of life as a movie director. He goes and buys books. But, you know, their movie, 2 English Girls, you know, Les Deux Anglaises et les Continents. The titles of it, the sequence is just copies of the book laid end to end. Some of it's annotated even with his notes on it and things. I don't say fetishizes. I don't really see it like that, but he loves books. And Godard has a similar thing. Godard will have someone sit there and read the book to you. People walk around reading in Godard movies all the time, and he loves to put words on the screen and play with words on the screen. So yes, so for me, and I feel like I share this kind of, I love books. You know, I mean, I have lots of books that I've not read that I keep buying more and more and more. You know, I could just live with the books I have and I won't get through them ever. But I still keep wanting more.
What kind of cinephile were you as a boy or as an adolescent?
Well, I liked, I mean, you know, I think, I will say Star Wars made a rather strong impression on me at the time. I mean, it was and in fact, my daughter, she's 7, and she's totally just, she is living as Princess Leia at this very moment. I mean, completely. In fact, she just went to Disneyland and she built a lightsaber. You can do that at Disneyland. It's cost $180. And you have to, how are they going to get that home? I don't know. Can't check a lightsaber. Okay, maybe you can check a lightsaber. That was part of what made me want to be a movie director. And I guess, you know, Steven Spielberg too. But the other one, early one, was Hitchcock. But you know, then I think by the time I was a teenager, I was seeing a whole range of things, and it was a kind of a good time for going to the movies. It wasn't like, you know, if I'd been in New York, I would have been at all the repertory houses and things that were there, and I was in Houston, and there's not that range, but there were movie theaters filled with movies and movies every weekend, you know, and so it was that sort of thing.
Unlike a lot of other directors of your generation, you didn't start like the indie way, you know, writing your script and doing it with, you know, your friends in New York and a dark. You had a different path. I mean, you didn't go to film school, and then you were fortunate to started essentially working for the studio. So it's a different. How do you think that beginning affected the evolution of the work?
Well, it's an interesting question, which no one ever. I don't recall anybody ever asked me about that, because that's exactly the situation. What happened with me was I applied to film school and didn't get into film school. And
which one?
Well, I applied to NYU and Columbia, and I did get. I mean, I would say I did get into Columbia, but I didn't get in. It took time. You know, I went one round, and then I had reapplied the next year, and I was waitlisted at NYU when I got into Columbia. But by the time I was in the film school, we were already making our little film, and we were making it the way that you described, independent little thing with the people in the thing. We were in Texas, not in New York, but you know, we had a few $1,000s for. We were inching away, 16 millimeter, black and white, that route, and then the $4,000 was done. So we were trying to raise $400,000, and we couldn't. But we had made a connection. Did you ever know Kit Carson?
Yes.
Yes. Well, yes. We'd met Kit, and Kit was sort of shopping it around, and so what happened was, nobody wanted to give us $400,000, but James L. Brooks and Polly Platt, these two, said, "We'll come out to us and we'll do it, you know, you'll have $5 million," because their minimum, they told us, well, we can't do a movie for less than $5 million because of our deal with Columbia. And we were like, all right. And it was odd. I mean, you know, I thought it was too much money for it to cost, and in a way it was, because it didn't need to cost that, but it's fine. But it also wasn't. It was okay, but it wasn't. But it was released by a big studio that didn't. It was released by Sony. They really didn't want it. Jim wanted it. Polly wanted it. They wanted to make it. They believed in it, but it was released by a big studio who was used to putting movies in a large number of theaters, and it wasn't like a smaller distributor who would know what to do with it. And they didn't. Not that I'm saying it would have made $50 million if it had been, you know, with somebody else, but it would have made more than $475,000, which is what it made. It wouldn't have earned back its profit if we had made it for $400,000 on that basis, and we'd spent $5 million. So it wasn't economically successful. Yeah.
But it set you on a course with this.
Yes, it set us on a it set us on a course, and a lot of people in the movie business saw the movie. So when we had our next script ready, which we did have the next script ready, it was sort of we were sort of into the system already, and so I wasn't kind of building up from. I was sort of positioned in a good way, even if not very many people went to the movie. We were involved in the movie business, and I was in the guilds and all that stuff already. So, yeah.
There was a question here.
Well, first of all, thank you for your wonderful films, and second of all, congratulations with your Glory to the Filmmaker Award.
Thank you.
As a young, oh, sorry, you can clap. You should clap. Yes. I'm very curious because as a young filmmaker, I'm quite insecure about my script, and I'm not sure, is this good enough? Should I change it? At this point in your career, with all the success that you've had, the award, are you still insecure about your directing and your writing? And what advice would you have for young filmmakers like me?
Well, I think I think there's no point when for me, I was more confident before. This movie that I'm talking about, Bottle Rocket, that didn't make it back its investment. Well, when we were making that movie, I felt like I really knew what I wanted it to be, and it helped that I had a partner. I had Owen Wilson. We'd written it together. The two of us were a team, and so that goes a long way when you're in that situation. But then when we screened the movie publicly, it was we didn't screen it in an encouraging environment. I can blame the audience, but it was, the confidence I had that was too much, perhaps, and it was quite shaken by this experience. And so it was a terrible way to first screen a movie, in part because we had 386 people in the audience, I think. I was seeing exactly how many people were there. And, by halfway through, maybe 120 were left or something like that. They left. And I watched them leave. And, you watch somebody get up and you say, maybe this one's just going to the bathroom, but why are they bringing all their bags and things, you can tell. Yes, but so from then on, anytime I'm screening a movie, it's terrifying. And then also, you can screen a movie in a film festival environment, and sometimes it's when you screen a movie at a film festival, and it's the benefactors of the festival and the officials and the delegates of something, and everyone is there, and that's one experience. And the other room is the young people who really want to see the movie, and that's the room that's more fun to be in if you made the movie because you can feel it. But setting all that aside, I think confidence is a pretty crucial thing, and I don't know how you build it up. I know how you can have it torn down, but you protect yourself from it any way you can. And I think one of the best ways is to have people who are with you. To have people who you can trust on your side, and those are the people to really cherish. And it's hard to maintain those relationships because there's always, especially in the beginning when it's so much about the things we want. And we want our lives to be and our work to be and all that stuff, aspiration. And then the emotions can get so complicated and people get competitive with each other. And any way you can protect those relationships, I think that's a pretty crucial thing.
Is that part of the... Is that part of the reason why, beside working with a lot of the same people behind the camera, you also use the same actor? There is that sense of comfort and protecting each other.
Yes, I do. I think so. In my case too, well, I always liked having, you know, I mean, at the very beginning, the cast of our movie was mostly just friends, and we had access to nothing else. We didn't have any actors available. We had just us, just them. And so I was comfortable with that, and I was comfortable with working with non-actors. The second movie I did, Rushmore, I have Roman's cousin, Jason, is is at the center of the movie. Well, I wouldn't call Jason at that time a non-actor, but he hadn't done it. He was a teenager, is what he was, and there were lots of young people in the movie, and I enjoyed working with those. Getting on over the years, I started to have more and more people with experience and more experience, and then the greatest, you know, these so many fantastic actors. I mean, I had some earlier, but the group grew, and I think if you've got your favorite actors in the world and you've become friends with them, there's a temptation to bring them back. And so for me, when we start a movie, I kind of, you know, in some ways, some of those relationships are, we're friends when we get together to make a movie. That's where the relationship is. So it becomes almost a reunion, and it's just one of those things. I like it, you know. I find it a fun way to make a movie. I love getting the group together. I love having new voices in the mix too, but I particularly love the people who come back.
The cliche of the actor's ego is like they like to improvise and show off, and there is very little of that in your films. Everybody seems very disciplined. So why do you think so many actors and actors of like really main actors want to work with you? They're like really happy to work with you. It seems like anyone you call says yes.
Well, it's not true. I mean, I get plenty of people say no, but I think. I think more, well, usually it has a lot to do with whether somebody likes the part that they're handed or the story, whether they're interested in the first place. What do you have in mind? That's almost always part of the conversation, especially somebody who is coming in for the first time. And then I think, most actors who I've worked with, they don't necessarily want to have the same experience from one movie to the next. Mm-hmm. They do a lot of movies, and they're happy to work one way on one movie and another way on another movie. But having said that, also there are some actors where I know I'm going to work this way with this person and this other way with this other one. Some people want different kinds of input or none or that sort of thing. But mostly, will say I love working with actors, and I love to have a group together like that. So possibly actors who work with me just know that. Oh, he's not gonna. I feel they might feel somewhat understood because I love them.
There's a question here.
Specific and say, for example, which of the actors from Asteroid City might we expect to see in future projects? And also, do you go about like writing parts for the actors you want to see again and that kind of thing? And how do you divvy up like the roles between new actors and the actors you've already worked with before?
Well, I'll say, usually the script is sort of, we're kind of setting aside the actors normally during the script writing because the script just tells you what it wants to be, and that is what it is. But when it comes to casting, well, from Asteroid City, there's some, Scarlett Johansson I'd worked with once before. She'd done a voice in Isle of Dogs, and she was great, and I loved her. And I've known her a little bit over the years, but the experience with her on Isle of Dogs, for instance, was. I just thought she was so good, and I loved just watching her play these scenes. And I was just like an audience member on the set, and it was like watching someone put on a play for me. I'm reluctant to do it because if I don't say one people, well, what about me? Just off the top of my head, that's one. I think Jason Schwartzman, we sort of built the movie around him. The first thing Roman and I discussed when we started concocting this story was the center of this is Jason. And we want him to, we have a character that is nothing like something he's played before. But Jason is such a sort of rangy kind of talent, and knowing him well, we know how much he hasn't done of what he's capable of. So there's always. Jason is another one. I mean, we want to do something else for Jason. But I will say there is nobody in the cast of Asteroid City who I didn't love working with, and it was a really sort of special experience, that movie, and strange, and really like being under somebody's spell, but I don't know whose. But it was really like when the movie ended, it was really like, whoa, back to reality. And I wanted to go back to my family, but also there was something strange that we were leaving that was very emotional for me anyway, and it was odd.
How did you feel? You made a series of films abroad, Italy, France, the UK. How was it going back home and to the West to make Asteroid City?
Well, we shot in Spain.
I know that. Yeah,
but it was but it was the West. Yes. Well, yeah. The last one I'd done that was set in America, and we shot in America, in fact, was Moonrise Kingdom, I think. Yeah. It's a pretty long time. It must be more than 10 years, I'm
yes.
sure. Or something like that. Yeah, it is more, isn't it? But I guess part of the thing was we were trying to do this story that was that we were wanting something a little bit surreal. We were wanting to do something that was sort of poetic and was reaching at things that we don't really understand, and that's the subject matter. And so, in a way, I think it's American, but it's I'll say this: one of our key inspirations, one of the key inspirations of this movie was Wim Wenders. Well, I'm from Texas. I should be the inspiration for this. He's from Berlin. But his view of the American West in his photographs and in Paris, Texas, but also in, Alice in the Cities, or his view of America was in some way sort of spoke to me more towards what we were going for than my own experience, in the deserts of Texas. And Sam Shepard was another one, and I feel like Sam Shepard, well, he comes from California, and he knows his way around Needles or whatever these towns are and things. But I also think when Sam Shepard goes to the West, he's going by way of the Lower East Side of Manhattan and Patti Smith and so on. I mean, his perspective is framed by something else, sort of avant-garde New York art world, theater and art, so it was a peculiar, and for this reason, I think the fact that we shot it in Spain is sort of fitting, because I don't think we wanted to be on familiar territory for us. It was appropriate that we stay foreigners.
So there was someone behind there.
Thank you. Just wanted to talk to you about the importance of music in your work, and specifically your collaboration with your music supervisor, Randa Poster, and if all of these ideas are preconceived prior to you punching the keys, or if this is part of a discovery process of figuring out what works, because the music has obviously evolved so significantly over the course of your body of work.
Yeah, yes, thank you. Well, the answer is it's every variation of it. There have been places where there was music I thought we should have in the sequence before the thing was written, before we even knew what the scene was. If punching the keys is writing the script, then sometimes it was before punching the keys. Is that punching the keys, is writing the script, or is it punching the keys? Yeah, because they also punch them in the cutting room, but I think you're talking about the script. It's all on the same computer. I think there have been movies where we are finding music the day that we're mixing a scene. You know, we've had to, Randall Poster has had to clear a Rolling Stones song while we're on the stage, or try, and we just mixed it in and trusted we'd sort it out. The process with Asteroid City, that one has a lot of music, a lot of songs, and we had a sort of world of music, a type of American music that we were working around, but the songs in particular, we were adding more and more all through the editorial process. We were putting them in radios and things. The one thing we had done in the movie, we put little speakers and radios on the sets, because they're going to be listening to something all over this town. But it grew. The experience with Alexandre Desplat with writing the music is its own kind of discovery process, and involves the same sort of things: preconceived ideas and then totally unexpected directions. So, I mean, it's kind of a broad answer, but the answers are sort of everything.
I have just a follow-up, since you're talking about Alexandre Desplat. Yesterday, he said something that I found really touchy, and he was talking about your films and your characters, and he said these characters are weird, but in the way he uses them and presents it to us, it opens your mind, because it makes you think about that weirdness in a different way. I like that a lot, and I think it's very true, and I wonder what you think.
I like it. I remember we screened the Royal Tenenbaums at the Cinematheque when it was still on the, what do you call it, like, what's it called, like across from the Tour Eiffel, what do you call that? The Trocadero.
Trocadero, yeah.
When it was still on the Trocadero, and in a little screening room, and there were only maybe about 16 people in the audience, but one was a big man with a beard. He looked like Michel Simon, and he really hated the movie. And he asked, in the Q&A afterwards, he asked all the questions, and they all had to do with the reasons why I had done the things that he hated. But his take on his opening question was, why would you make a movie about all these crazy people? And to me, well, it's autobiographical. They're almost all related to specific people in my life. I mean, they're not me, but they're called the Tenenbaums. Well, they're real Tenenbaums that these cover. I mean, not that they're based on the Tenenbaums, but virtually every aspect of the movie comes from real people in my life. So when Alexandre says weird people in a different way of seeing it, well, to me, it's like, yes, from the inside, it doesn't seem weird, and from the outside, it does. And that's, it's sort of familiar to me in a way, I guess.
But I think it is lovely the way you make kind of rewires, the audience. You suggest the audience to adjust the perspective on those characters. I think it's part of the empathy of the films. This was a question here.
Thanks. Your films are full of colors. They transpire joy. They are almost like medicine for the soul for us viewers. But you mentioned the inevitable chaos of film production. So how do you deal with that? You don't look like a director that would lose the temper on set, or...
The what of pre-production?
The inevitable chaos that you have when you have to make a movie.
Yes. Well, let me think. Well, the chaos, there's different, the chaos comes in to different degrees. There's the general chaos, which is, first of all, to me, and this is not the only way to experience it, but every time we start a shot, something inside me is not sure that we're going to get it. That, every shot might not work. We might not succeed. So every time you get to say, now it's good and we'll do it again or whatever, but once you get to it being good, there's a sort of relief involved in everything. There's a basic level of uncertainty on just the minimal thing. But then there's the thing that happens when movies get wild, you know. And, you know, some movies get wilder than others. If you say we're going to make this movie at sea, for instance, you're inviting tremendous chaos, yes. And, you know, the earth will have something to say about it. You know, things happen. I mean, actually, Enzo Sisti is here, who was one of the producers of The Life Aquatic, and this was a challenging movie to make. I mean, we had planned to shoot the movie we were going to shoot all the things that we needed to do at sea at the very beginning of the film while the weather was good. Well, the weather wasn't good, so we had to then scramble and shoot other things. But then when we finally did need to go to sea, it was during the time when the weather wasn't meant to be good in the first place. So we were having to shoot to find days to go back out to sea in not necessarily ideal conditions. And then you know, it's one thing to have one boat, and it's another thing to have a boat. As soon as you have two things in the water, you've got a problem, because they don't want to line up to each other. And if you're trying to, let's say, frame it a certain way, that's a real problem. So I think you've got to know that. I think having said all that, you know, if you love the thing that you're doing, you'll kind of see it through. But there were days on shooting that movie, for instance, that were discouraging, because there were days where I thought we're not going to get anything today. And it was literally about nature working against us. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm totally answering the question, but you know, I think I've never had a movie where I thought I want to stop. You know, that's never had happened to me. And I think, you know, that if you, there's a director who once told me about a movie where he had that feeling in the middle of the movie, and he never got back to feeling like he wanted to do it, and the movie wasn't good. And I think you've got to believe in it, or you have no chance, because even if you do believe in it, it's, you know, it's hard.
We have time for a couple of more. One is here.
Hi, I commend your filmmaking, and particularly on the production design and the use of colour, which you've just been talking about. I just wondered if you would have some tips or some examples or some funny stories about how you actually transferred your filmmaking from black and white into colour, because it's just so vivacious and full of pattern and imagery, and just there's so many elements to it which you encompass in your filmmaking.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think, yeah, I've had some movies that have both, black and white and color. The French Dispatch and Asteroid City, and even Grand Budapest Hotel, we had a sequence in black and white in that movie. You know, I love black and white movies. I guess if someone was going to say you have only one way you can do your movies, I would say Academy ratio, something like that, black and white. That would probably be my first choice. But I don't want to have only one way to make the movies. And I think, you know, the first movie I made, I had planned to do it in black and white. We had started shooting it in black and white. It was, you know, we were shooting in a different scale from the movie we ultimately made. I was required to do it in color. But when we started doing it in color, I saw opportunities, and I thought, well, okay, let's use everything here. Anyway, I don't know. It's, you know, it's each story leads you in one direction or another. And it might be black and white, it might be color, and it might be widescreen, and it might be something else. But I think, you know, that's one of the exciting things about making movies. Just the size of the toolkit is sort of, you know, kind of amazing, and also that you can draw on virtually every other art form and put it in your movie. You can use, you know, anything. You can use paintings, and you can use dance, and you can use music, and you can use words in all sorts of ways. And so I guess that's one of the things that just makes it such a kind of mesmerizing medium to work in, that people get so obsessed with when they do it.
This gentleman that waited for a long time there.
Ryan, I run the Red Sea Labs. We develop talents and sort of like manage where they go with their films and the script writing. You mentioned that you're a Star Wars fan, and we've seen a lot of people who've watched Star Wars and decided to become filmmakers. But I can see from your films that there's also, and I've read this before, is that you were inspired by the Indian cinema as well. And I can see that there's a lot of colorful frames that you chose that I can see from old Indian films. And how does this beautiful picture comes to inspiration inside your mind?
Well, yes, I guess to me, from India, there's two big things. One is the body of work of Satyajit Ray. Well, that's mostly black and white, and he's from Calcutta, and it's Bengali cinema, and the great thing with him is many of his films are adaptations of literary works, but this is somebody who was a writer. He wrote movies, he wrote his scripts, he wrote some from scratch. He also wrote books. I mean, he had his own sort of detective series that was quite successful and helped fund his work. He wrote the scores to many of his movies. I mean, he was a musician, and he wrote wonderful musical scores. I used some of the music that he wrote in Darjeeling Limited that we made, and he worked with wonderful actors over a long period of time, and he produced many, many movies. So for me, he's one of those ones who has such a strong voice and a way of working that's so unique, set of collaborators that is repeated again and again. And in a way, those are for me, some of the most inspiring filmmakers, because they find a way. People like Satyajit Ray, they're rare, and it's somebody who finds a way to live a life of doing cinema that's totally personal. Not so many people do that over the course of it, because cinema is, because it's an industry too, and it has its own. It's not usually that personal. Another movie from India, though, is a French movie, Jean Renoir's movie, The River, which is a movie I really was floored by when I first saw it, and I've seen many times. And that's a color movie. It's also Bengal, but that's one I love. And also Louis Malle's documentaries that he made in India, Calcutta, and his whole what's the big series of India movies called? Does anybody know that?
The Mall? No.
Louis Malle he has one that's Calcutta, but then he has the series of movies. It's many hours. Phantom India. Nobody knows Phantom India. You should see this.
Uh-oh.
But Louis Malle. I'm just free associating. But Louis Malle. I mean, he falls in the same category. A life of cinema. And I mean, Louis. I mean, he starts with Cousteau. He's like. Jacques Cousteau comes to visit his film school and says, is there anybody here who's got some basic techniques, who wants to come on a boat with us and film with us? We're going to dive, and we're going to do things, and you need to know how to dive. And one person in the classroom raises his hand, and he's Louis Malle, and he's 20 years old or something. And, the next year, 2 years later, he's sharing the Palme d'Or with Jacques Cousteau and starts his career in movies. That's the way these things sometimes happen. But his documentaries, the whole body of his documentaries are also very, very interesting. And you should see those too.
We have one more there. And then that's okay, the one there, and that's it.
Hi. First of all, I love Bottle Rocket, and I don't get how people could get out of the cinema. And,
they couldn't get out fast enough.
Yeah. And so in the first part of your career, from Bottle Rocket, then Rushmore and Tenenbaums, you shoot it in a traditional way, let's say, with all your unique elements, but in a more traditional way. Then you experimented with animation. And to me, in the latest movie, it seemed like the two directions started to blend together. Is this a direction you want to keep in the future? We saw it also in the wonderful Harry Sugar story, which I loved. We saw this contamination between animation and a traditional way of shooting. And then I wanted to ask if Sergei Parajanov, the Georgian director, is an influence in your movies, because I find some elements, similar elements in the poetical composition of the image.
Well, now that's one I need to look up. Say him again.
Sergei Parajanov.
And so what would I have seen?
Color Pomegranates.
Oh, Color of Pomegranates. Yes, that one I have, but I never watched it. I do have it. I have the DVD. So I'll look at it, and then I'll tell you whether he influenced me.
There is an amazing new restoration of one of his early films shot in Ukraine, here in Venice.
Oh, what's that one called?
I don't remember the title.
Yeah. Color of Pomegranates, I do have.
Yeah.
The answer. The next movie that I have the script for, I think is a little more. It's a little more direct, and I think it's it's true. Doing an animated movie, which was fantastic, Mr. Fox. It changed the way I prepare the films, and I started to design ways of staging things a bit differently, and I'm sure this one has. Every movie kind of builds on the next. I feel like when you work in a thing, you're always, something happens in the movie, and that's something you can develop it in the next one. But I think this next one has a certain simplicity that is a bit different from the more recent ones. And in particular, it's mostly a smaller cast, and as I say, it's just quite linear and direct. And I think the way we're kind of thinking of envisioning it and shooting it is a different direction.
Okay, very last, because she's been very patient. No, that's it. That's her. Yeah.
Hello, thank you so much for sharing all this information with us. It's very inspirational. And my question is connected with your inspiration, because quite often we can get stuck somewhere, like, even like in the process of production or even development of the script. So can you please tell us what usually inspires you? What helps you when you feel like something is wrong and you should get more strengths? Yeah.
Yes. Well, I find that often the thing that gives that, I don't know if this applies to everybody, but for me, often the thing that where the inspiration comes is from somebody else's artwork. Something you go to see. Sometimes it's. You go to Amsterdam and you go to 3 different museums in 2 days, and you leave with things in your mind, and they start brewing. And often the inspiration, I think, is you don't know you've got it yet, and then it circles around in your mind. And I do feel like when you're making some kind of sort of artwork, a lot of the work happens when you're not trying to do it. It's sort of brewing. But more than anything, it's artists, I feel, who inspire me. Now, a story can be inspired so much by things in real life and by some terrible experience, some good experience, some historical experience. But the thing in the end that I feel that really is the energizing thing is seeing somebody else do it. Thank you.
I think this is a
Thanks,
good way
everybody.
to end it. Thank you, Wes. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Julia. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. That was fun.